Hey everybody, and welcome to another ranking video. So in this series I take a look at the last 10 new to me board games that I've played, and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite. Now generally speaking, there's nothing bad on this list this time. A generally solid bunch of games, but of course I like some way more than others. Now before I get started on the list, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in my show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 10 I have Dinosaur Island, which is a mid-weight Euro worker placement game about trying to run your own Jurassic Park, I suppose. And this one you are drafting these DNA dice, you are then using them to create dinosaurs and put them in enclosures and exhibit them to the public for money and profit and points. Most of the worker placement stuff is fairly standard, but I did like this idea of the more dangerous dinosaurs that you breed and exhibit, your security risk goes up, which is another track you need to manage. Otherwise, you can end up losing lots of points as the dinosaurs eat your customers essentially. So it does have that kind of risk and reward. More dangerous animals means better points, but more risk of them breaking out. So that was quite nice how it worked. Always having to increase your enclosure sizes to fit more dinosaurs in there, etc. It's a very logical progression in this game. Now, I did feel like this game was fairly stagnant because it seemed like the more dangerous dinosaurs you would get, it just meant that you would just have to increase your level and so on. So it kind of kept on leveling itself out as you'd go up, and it didn't really escalate in terms of its excitement. It just kind of stayed level, because if you raise one thing, you just automatically raise another thing and you keep going on. So it kind of feels like it's almost like an artificial escalation rather than actually feeling exciting. So I can see why people would like this one. I'm not quite sure the hooligan mechanism worked for me. I thought it was a little bit lucky for a Euro game, but it was absolutely fine. I'm not against it at all. And yeah, it was pretty standard stuff. So that is Dinosaur Island at number 10. At number 9, I have Peanut Club. Now this is a pretty wacky auction style game, and randomly you are dished out this bunch of cards at the start of the game, and they come in 3 different currencies. I think it's camels, peanuts and money. And basically you have this hierarchy of what these different currencies are worth. So you might have a ton of money, but because, say, the peanut outranks the money, a single peanut is worth more than all the money. But I do like the fact that this is a closed economy and you never get any change, and you have tons of these tools to mess with the rules, basically, such as changing that priority order or blocking a certain currency being used, etc. And I like the way that you only get those tokens refreshed once in the entire game. So knowing when to use them is quite important, otherwise you can be left high and dry without much control of your fate. You're using these currencies to buy these cards. These cards come with different symbols, and the more pairs of symbols you collect, the more points you get, basically. I thought the scoring itself was very underwhelming. I think this game could have done a lot more to make the scoring as wacky as the actual auction mechanism. And I think this game would have benefited much more if they did that. They didn't have to do a whole lot. They could have just used some tried and tested set collection mechanisms. But the fact that all the cards essentially scored the same way just felt a bit lacking for me. It felt like it missed out on its potential. But I did like it. I'm generally a fan of auction games. I do have a ton of them. This one isn't quite as good as most of them I have, but I would play it again because of some of that quirkiness, and it has some very nice artwork as well. So I think, it is unpredictable, it's wild, it's chaotic, but I did somewhat enjoy it because of that. So that is Peanut Club at number 9. At number 8, I have Bombay. Now, Bombay is a pick up and deliver game as you're moving these elephants around the map, collecting silk, and then depositing that silk at these different kind of locations based on a supply and demand mechanism where, the longer a certain type of silk has been neglected, the more it's going to be worth, and the player with the most money at the end of the game is the winner, essentially. And there were some different strategies you can go down, as you could erect these palaces in your name, essentially, and if other players would use your routes and pass through your palaces, then you'd get some passive income there, which I did like. And the game is fairly quick, and it's again pretty standard stuff if you're looking at a pick up and deliver genre as a whole. You're just moving around, picking stuff up, I'm trying to not waste any movement and strike when the iron is hot in terms of the demand. That's pretty much where the game sits. You can plan ahead quite a few turns, and because you only get 3 actions per turn, sometimes the game can move slower than you want it to. But it's definitely a nice introductory family weight pick up and deliver game that's not really got anything wrong with it at all. It's just not terribly exciting, and it feels somewhat pedestrian because there are so many games that do this, and I think there are better pick up and deliver games out there, even quick ones. So I liked it. Again, it's fairly standard stuff, but yeah, I couldn't really recommend it. At number 7, I have Living Forest. Now, I wasn't quite sure what to expect with this one because I went in completely blind to this one. A friend taught it to me. And this is one of those games that are quite synonymous with the time this was released, because this is a few years old now. And this was when a game called the Quaxer Quedlinburg was red hot, and the push your luck mechanism in general was quite hot. And this game has a lot of shared DNA with a game like the Quaxer Quedlinburg. However, this one is more card driven, as you are building up a deck of cards, playing them out in front of you, trying not to go bust by revealing a certain type of symbol. But I like the way that you could string these cards along and build up different currencies to do different things. So you're collecting better cards, you're fighting off these kind of flame threats, you're building up a little tableau of things in front of you. And I like the way that you could have a ton of different ways to win the game. Like, even by revealing a certain amount of symbols on the cards you're playing is a way you could automatically win. So I did like the way that you have to kind of dive into different ways to optimize your deck and try to win as quickly as you can. Essentially, it was pretty punchy, it was quite exciting at times, and all in all, I thought it was a very nice, well-rounded game, albeit nothing terribly original. In fact, I can't think of a single thing that's original, but it does what it does quite well. And considering this did quite obviously, or was directly inspired by other games, I think this one did hold its own. So that is Living Forest at number 7. At number 6, I have Elysium. This is a card game with variable decks that you're using game from game. And what you're doing is you're essentially drafting cards from this communal pool, building up a bit of an engine as you collect them, because all these cards have different abilities, whether they're instant abilities, ongoing abilities, once per game abilities, once per round abilities. And it's all about trying to string these things together to get as many points as you can. Now, the twist on this one is, in fact, there's a couple of twists. Number one is when you draft the cards in the first place, you need to have the matching colours pillars in front of you on your player board. But whenever you draft a card, you have to give up one of those pillars. So your options are becoming squeezed as the round progresses. But the main scoring mechanism in this game is interesting because you have to use this kind of mechanism to shift it from your engine to your scoring pool. I think it's called a transfer action. And basically you're trying to collect sets of the different colours or sets of the same colour in the different values. But as soon as you make them eligible for scoring, you no longer get the power of the card. So it really is that trade-off about how much do I want to exploit this card before I secure it for endgame points. And I tend to like it when games do that. I have seen games such as Coco Pelli, games such as Valley of the Kings use that before, or even Tyrants of the Underdark. It's a nice, visceral, kind of conflicting mechanism that works well in board games. So I definitely think this one did it well. I feel like a lot of the cards were quite minuscule in what they did. And there were different setups you could use to get a different feel of the game, whether you want a more confrontational game or a more kind of comborific game. But they did feel fairly standard. And personally, I found that whenever I played this one, I was kind of neglecting what the powers could do, because generally they would all work anyway, just to collect the exact cards I wanted for the end game scoring. And that kind of took a bit out of the decision making for me. But it's a good game. It's definitely solid. Got some good design pedigree here. Amazing artwork. Some good variability if you want the different, use the different decks together and see how they combine. And all in all, it's a bit of a near miss for me, really. I don't really see myself coming back to this one anymore, but I am glad I've played it. So that is Elysium at number 6. At number 5, I have Splitto. So Splitto is a set collection game where you are working with your neighbours. So if you're familiar with games such as Between Two Cities, then you might understand what I mean, where each player is working with their neighbour and are sharing a pool of points between you. And in this game, you are using this pass and draft system collecting either these coloured and numbered cards or collecting these scorecards, which kind of work hand in hand with those coloured cards. So some might say, well, if this particular pool of points has the most 4s, then you'll get X amount of points, or you want the majority of these cards, or a set of these cards, and so on. And because you are working with your neighbours, you are trying to keep each pool as balanced as possible, because at the end of the game, both your pools are multiplied with each other for your final score. So having one great pile is not going to be a great idea if your other pile is really weak, because your multiplier is going to be that much lower. And I did like the fact that when you draft these cards, you are doing them simultaneously, and sometimes you and your opponents / teammates might have conflicting ideas about what you want to score for, and you might kind of tarnish and sabotage each other's scoring, even though you're somewhat working together, because you can't openly communicate what you want to do here. It's a very fast game, it's very smooth, tons of different scoring cards, and I think it does what it does really well. So a game that scales well, no matter who you play this with or how many people you play this with, and I think it goes up to like 6 or 7 players, which is quite nice. The game is still going to take around the same length, so it does have that 7 Wonders pacing to it, where no matter how many people you're playing with, you're still going to play in the same time frame, which is always a huge plus for me. So again, pretty standard stuff. Again, cherry picked different things from different games, but it does it very well in a 15 to 20 minute game, and I don't really have much negative to say about Splitto. So that is Splitto at number 5. At number 4, I have Valbara. So this is a simultaneous selection game, as each player has an identical deck of cards, but you only have access to 5 of those cards at a time. And each of these cards not only has a unique number on them from 1 to 12, but they also have a power associated to it. And what you're doing is that you're simultaneously choosing these cards, revealing them, and then depending on who's got the lowest number is going to get a first chance to grab these scoring cards, which will score you points based on a ton of different set collection methods. And then all the cards will also come with that power, which will trigger in order. So some things might say, well, if you are the first card to play in amongst the players, then you'll get some bonus points, or steal some points from the person who played in front of you, or double the points from your scoring card this round. And it's all about trying to almost get into the head of your opponents to know what they're going to play, maybe use a bit of deduction because you have open knowledge about what they've played previously, to try and to try and squeeze as many points as you can out of every single card play. I tend to like games like this. This one is very minimalist, very pure in the way it works, and I like it a lot. Most of these games I tend to like the idea of, but they often become a little bit chaotic and a little bit nasty at times. This one, I think, stood away from that, kept it a bit more player friendly, and even if a card wouldn't pull off to its maximum degree, you could probably still get something good from it by getting the best card, scoring card, etc. So I did like the way that worked. So all in all, I think this is a very solid game. Plays in around 25 minutes. One of the simplest but best versions of a game like this that I've played, and I'm quite a fan of it, and it's getting better and better for me. So yeah, definitely increasing my enjoyment over time of Valbara. So that is Valbara at number 4. Okay, so we have 3 commendations this episode. The first one I was a little bit on the fence with giving, and I'll try to explain why. So at number 3, I have Spicy. So Spicy is a very simple game. It's a bluffing game, as you are trying to shed cards from your hand. And these cards come in 3 different suits. You've got like peppers, you've got like salt, and you have like chili, I think. And they're also numbered from 1 to 10. And all you do on your turn is you either pass and draw a card, or you can play a card face down onto a stack and claim or declare what that card is. Now, when you play a card, every other player has the chance to call your bluff and challenge on what you've played, because you can blatantly lie and say, you've played something that you didn't play. But they can only ever challenge on either the type of card that you played, as in the suit, or the exact number. So I like the way that you have 2 different categories of bluffing here, because you could be honest about the suit but lying about the number, which means that if you're challenged on the suit, even though you lied, technically by the game's rules you didn't lie, because you didn't lie about the suit. And that means that whenever anybody falsely accuses you, you get to pick up the stack and take it as points at the end of the game. And also if you shed all the cards from your hand, you get like 10 bonus points, which is quite significant. So I do like the way that the tension of this game ramps up as the game goes on, as that stack of cards gets stronger and stronger, or bigger and bigger. And obviously that's a ton of points there. But I do like the way that the game almost forces you to allow some cards to slip through, and it always feels exciting when you're getting away with murder, shedding these cards that you never had in the first place, and it has that real fun, jovial feel to it. And early experience of this one have been top notch for me. So gameplay, it is what it is. It's very simple stuff, but this one managed to pull something out of me that a lot of other games like this didn't do. I've played games such as Cockroach Poker before, and I found that very uninteresting because nobody won. There's only one loser of the game, whereas this one, when you pull off these big bluffs and you get a ton of points, it feels much more exciting than just not losing. So that's why I like this one so much more. But is it the best game ever? Absolutely not. I mean, but pure fun factor, scalability and just the novelty of it, I don't have anything else like it, and I think this is probably the strongest game of that type that I've played. So that's why I have put Spicy at number 3. At number 2, I have The Number. Now, what a strange game this is. It's certainly going to be a polarizing game, as you're either going to love it or you are probably not going to get much from this one at all. Because, and I understand this, I think a lot of people are going to question the amount of game that is in the box here. But in this one, you are writing a 3-digit number down, and then basically from highest to lowest, you're going to put them in order. And then starting from the top, you're going to have a look if anybody below you has written any duplicate digits. And if they have, you are going to be eliminated from scoring until somebody who's eligible, basically. And whoever's written the highest number with no duplicate digits in it is going to get some bonus points. And you're also going to score a number of points equal to the first digit that you've written. So higher numbers are great because they're worth way more points, but people are probably going to know you're going to go for the high numbers and try to sabotage you. That's essentially the game. You're going to play through round after round of that, but each time you write a successful number down and score it as points, you are going to eliminate those digits to be played again for the round. So as the round progresses, more information becomes available to your opponents, meaning that they're going to have a better idea about what you're going to write down, which means that they might know that, well, you've already used your 9, therefore I can go for my 9, put it right at the top of this and get a chunk of points. Or I might go lower than you, knowing that I'm going to eliminate you and prevent you from scoring. That's pretty much the gist of the game. It's very interesting. It's a game that you don't really need the physical components to play, because you could play it with pen and paper. But it's cheap, it's affordable, it's nice to have the dry erase stuff with it. And this is the kind of game that I love to have in my collection. I can pull this out anytime and almost guarantee myself a good time. And I can really foresee myself racking up the plays of this one, hitting that 50 to 100 play counts, because it just strikes all the chords that I want for this type of filler. And when we've played so many games, you want something that is distinct and unique, and The Number has that written all over it. So that is why I rate The Number at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Chin by Rainer Knizia. Now, this is pretty much a pure abstract tile placement game, as you are trying to shed these pagodas as quickly as possible, because if you do, you instantly win the game. Now, all you do in this game is you take one of 3 tiles in your hand and you play it on the board and just touching another tile, essentially. And these tiles have 1 or 2 of 3 different terrain types on them. And you're essentially trying to create an area of the same matching terrain type. And if you do, you put one of your pagodas on there. But as soon as you become a 5 in size, you get to put a double pagoda down on there, which is obviously a good thing. Because not only do you get to shed more pagodas, but you become protected from having that region stolen by other players. Because if you ever end up having a bigger region than somebody else of the same type, and you encroach on them, you can kick their pagoda off and claim it for yourself. There's additional mechanisms as well. As you venture and attach yourself to these different cities and towns on the board, you can shed more pagodas on them if you have the most pagodas touching them. And it really is a game about seizing opportunities, blocking people, and stuff like that. And I'm generally not a huge fan of abstract games, but this one for me is just almost like the perfect abstract. It's so clean, literally just draw a tile, place a tile. I love the little tricks you can pull off, which you probably have to play the game to realise how they work. And it ticks so many boxes for me. It plays in around 30 minutes, and the depth here for a 30-minute game is outstanding. And I found myself playing this one again and again and again. It plays very differently at, say, 2 players, where it's a bit more cerebral, a bit more head-to-head than it does at 3 players. And I probably like both player counts equally. I've not played it at 4 players yet. But the 3rd player, it makes it a bit more chaotic, but almost in a good way, because more opportunities become apparent. And this game, I think it's amazing. I think it is truly a great Knizia, maybe even my top 3-4 Knizia games that I've ever played, which is saying something because I tend to love his games anyway. But yeah, this one secured its place in my collection probably forever, because it is that good. And yeah, I'm all over it. So that is Chin at number 1. So there we have it. That's another 10 games here. Again, a very strong bunch. And I've really had a good time playing these ones, because it's always good to play solid games. So if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.